Hey, how's it going? My name is King Jobs, and we're back with another video on Ranked Resurgence. As I recently made it to Diamond with a 4.2 KD while mostly solo queuing and playing with a ton of different teammates, I wanted to share 15 of the most common and detrimental mistakes I've noticed both myself and my teammates making on the way to Diamond. Hopefully by pointing these mistakes out, you all will be able to fix them in your own gameplay and start to climb to your desired rank much quicker. Alright, so the first mistake I notice a ton of my teammates make is that they don't often utilize fire sales. And just in case you're unaware, there's a fire sale in every ranked match on Fortune's Keep in Zone 3 at 1 minute and 5 seconds, where all purchases at the buy are 50% off. Now during fire sales, this is typically the order in which I purchase things. I prioritize first, self-revives, gas masks second, third, UAVs or precision airstrikes, and fourth, I go for ammo boxes or armor boxes. However, if you don't have enough armor to begin with, definitely put that up at the top in terms of priorities. Now, one thing that I think might be preventing some players from utilizing the fire sale at all times is when buys are located in the zone. However, so long as the buy is green instead of grayed out, it can be used. And you also shouldn't be afraid to run into the zone and take a little bit of damage to buy essential items, which could greatly improve your chances of winning. If you need to make multiple trips in and out of the zone, that's totally okay too. Don't worry too much about the gas damage. Moving on to mistake number 2, and this one is using the wrong type of gun in any engagement. Now, it might seem simple, but in the heat of the moment, it can be really easy to utilize the wrong weapon. In this example, I notice an enemy zipping up to a strong position, which would make it hard for us to win the game. And as I start moving to engage him, I have plenty of time here to switch to my primary AR, but I keep out my HRM sub and lose the gunfight. Now, it didn't help that I took the fight from out in the open, but having my RAM out would have given me a better chance to win, as you can see by this TTK graph from True Game Data. And the purpose of this example is showing the importance of becoming familiar with the ranges which are best for the two different types of guns that you're running. At close ranges, you should always have out your sub, and for anything further than that, make sure to use your primary weapon. Next up is mistake number 3, which is running out of smokes in the mid to late game. In these stages of the game where rotations are incredibly important, having smokes is essential, especially the higher up in the ranks that you get. Additionally, with the nerfs to placement SR in the mid-season 2 update, getting higher placements and more wins has become a necessity for you to climb. Due to this, you need to be constantly keeping an eye on your inventory and ensuring that you have smokes at all times. In general, I recommend always having at least 4, but maybe even 6 if you're choosing to not run the resupply perk. Now, how my teammates and I always stay stocked on smokes is that we usually run the resupply perk. We are constantly buying munition boxes at every opportunity, and we always stow our smokes before hitting world ammo resupply stations. But regardless of how you do it, you should always ensure you have smokes available to use in a ranked match. Now, mistake number 4 is one that we all make, regardless of skill level, and that is not playing your life. Okay, first, imagine a scenario where both your teammates go down, and unfortunately, we haven't knocked anyone. I'm sure that all our brains are initially screaming at us to run, but then I know that there's that little voice in the back of your mind that goes, what if I could 1v3? Or maybe just get 1 kill, you know? That would help the team a lot, right? Don't do it. You're not him. You're not a top 250 player. Pack your bags as fast as you can and get the heck out of there. But playing your life doesn't only come into play in this situation. It also comes into play in almost every fight. Say, for example, you're starting a fight with a team or pushing an enemy first. If your first shots don't connect, disengage, get out, play it up, and try again while letting your teammates get to work while you reset. Or imagine another situation where you get a little too far away from your teammates and some enemies roll up and surprise you. Run around until your team can come and back you up. Playing your life for just a couple of seconds before you chow someone can make a big difference between seeing the dreaded respawn timer, spectating your teammates, and just needing to get revived by your teammates instead. Moving on to mistake number 5, and man, this is one that drives me nuts as someone who has solo queued the majority of the games on my way to Diamond. And this mistake is not using your mic. Please communicate using your microphone. I know that all you duo players have your mics on. You're just not talking to your third random teammate in chat. Listen, I get it. You might not want to talk to a random person. You know, it might not be the mood that you're in or that kind of thing. But here's the thing. I'm simply not going to be able to play at my best and in a coordinated way with you guys if I don't get comms from either of you. And no, pings are not as good and do not take the place of actively communicating verbally. Now, one extra random tip when it comes to communicating, and this is something that's extremely important, is that you should always call out precision airstrikes for 2 reasons. Yes, although they did add the PA icon onto the minimap, no notification or no banner notification PAs are still a thing. So you should always call those out to your teammates, as chances are if you didn't get that notification pop up across your screen, they didn't either. The other reason is that counter UAVs can also make PAs easy to miss on the minimap, as it distorts it a ton. So this is why I always call out that a precision airstrike is on my team whenever I can. Moving on to mistake number 6, which is not knowing what reduces your teammate's respawn timer. In Ranked Resurgence, there are a lot of different ways to reduce this timer, and the first and easiest is being on the move. So instead of sitting in a corner, ratting and waiting for your teammates to respawn, running around will every so often reduce the respawn timer for your teammates by 2 seconds. The other ways of reducing this timer includes looting crates, bags, or medicine cabinets, cracking, knocking, or thirsting enemies, and also completing contracts. Something important to note is that cracks only reduce the respawn timer by 1 second, so generally, it's not the best way to get your teammate back quicker. But getting a knock and finishing an opponent will reduce that timer by a lot. And sometimes the difference between going back to the lobby with a big SR loss or staying in the game can come down to just a couple of seconds. So make sure you keep these things in mind while trying to get your teammates back into the fight. Mistake number 7 is not trading with your teammates. And now this is something that in order to get into the higher ranks, you're going to need to practice regardless of if you play with a team or are solo queuing. You need to pay attention to where your teammates are at all times and if they're fighting. And if they are fighting, make sure to keep track of the kill feed to see if one of your teammates has gotten a knock. If your teammate has gotten a knock, you better be close behind, following up your teammate in order to get their trade. Now here in this example, I get a knock and a crack on another player, but my 2 teammates who are nearby aren't even looking at where the enemies have been shooting from for the last 30 seconds. If they follow me up here, it's an easy trade and then we could likely reset for a 3v1. Instead, I die and then my teammates quickly get sent back to the lobby shortly after me. At the same time though, I get it, you could make the argument that I pushed alone and got cooked for it. That's fair. But in general, you should be trying to play together with your team at all times, especially if they've gotten a knock on an enemy player. Mistake number 8 is not paying attention to the respawn timer. At the beginning of Zone 4, the ability to respawn in any Resurgence match goes away. And the last thing that you should be doing at this time is making a way too aggressive push on a team. At this point in the game, you and your team need to instead slow down and start playing smart and focus on positioning instead of just going for kills. Mistake number 9 has 2 parts, but they're both related to not realizing that you're on UAV. Now with the release of Season 2, Ravensoft has made a change to provide you more information for when you're on UAVs in the form of a big red outline around your minimap, which indicates that there's a UAV on the map. Now it won't tell you who has it, but just know people can tell exactly where you are. And the higher up you get in Ranked Resurgence, the more teams there are that are going to be purchasing UAVs frequently. However, this isn't the only time you appear on the UAV or the minimap. In order to succeed in Ranked Resurgence, you have to know that every time one of your teammates is finished, the enemy team knows exactly where you are. If you're trying to pull off a sneaky flank or hide until your teammates respawn, just know that if your teammate died, you gotta move around for a little bit until that UAV ping goes away on the enemy's minimap. Mistake number 10 is not paying attention to how many people are alive in the endgame. And this is a big one that a lot of BR players struggle with, especially if they're newer to the genre. When it's in the late game, you have to juggle focusing on gunfights, dodging streaks, nades, explosions, and everything else that's going on around you. And in those situations, it's easy to lose track of how many people are still alive in the game. However, it's one of the most important things that you should be paying attention to because it can make a huge difference on how you play a fight. So one thing that I always do is if I'm spectating a teammate in the late game, is calling out how many people are alive on each team, and that's it. Whether it's a 3v1v1 or a 2v2v2 or whatever it is, giving my teammate this information who's still alive gives them just one less thing to think about. Otherwise, I just let them play their game. Yapping in their ear at the end of the game is one of the worst things you can do as a dead teammate. Moving on to mistake number 11, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves, and that is not shooting counter UAVs down right away. Throughout all the ranks, from bronze to diamond, it didn't matter. The majority of my teammates do not ever shoot down counter UAVs. And if there is a counter UAV up on the map and you aren't actively fighting, you should be shooting it down. The minimap gives you so much information, and not having access to it at any given moment in Ranked Resurgence is a terrible thing. So always, always, always make sure to shoot out counter UAVs. All right, so the next 3 mistakes are all kind of related to each other, and they all have to do with what you should not do when you respawn. And these are ones I've seen a ton of my teammates do time and time again on the road to Diamond. So first, we have mistake number 12, which is dying in the air when you're respawning. In low ranks, you should never once die out of the air. This is because people in lower elos can't aim as well and usually don't team shoot people who are redeploying. And if you are dying out of the air in low ranks, the higher up you get, the more often and the worse it's going to get for you. So this is something that you will need to fix right away. How you fix this is by initially pulling your chute immediately when you respawn at maximum height, surveying the area, the place you just died, and then determining what is a safe place for you to land back on. However, you need to do this quickly. You can't just sit there floating around in the air for 30 seconds because then you're going to get low enough to the ground that it's going to be easy for teams to pick you out of the air. Another way to avoid this is by constantly moving at max speed in the air from left to right or in a circle. Any kind of movement at all will make you harder to hit, especially when you're up high in the air. And my last tip for this is the second someone starts shooting at you, even if they don't hit you right away, dive straight down. They may have missed the first couple of shots, but I promise that they're going to fix their aim eventually, or their teammates are going to hit theirs. Also, one quick note, make sure that you have auto redeploy off in the settings. This is one of the most important things to have off for Resurgence. Mistake number 13 is landing directly on a loadout when it's not safe. And my low-level teammates did this all the time. Maybe it's just that they don't care about dying, or they don't mind dying 10 times in a row if it means that on that 10th attempt, they get their loadout. But you're actively costing yourself and your team by doing this. If you try to get your loadout off respawn and get cooked the second you get within 5 feet of it, don't do it again. What you should do instead is land safely, preferably on your teammates, get a couple of decent guns and plates, and then start making your way over to the loadout together. If you're constantly respawning, your teammates are going to have to slow down to make sure that you all don't die and get sent back to the lobby. And also, every time you die, you're losing SR yourself. So make sure to turn that brain on and just stop dying on a loadout over and over and over again. Moving on to mistake number 14, which is landing back at a drop spot when your team is at a disadvantage. Now this one is pretty situational, but there's going to be a lot of times where you and maybe your teammate as well get cooked without taking anyone on the enemy team down with you. An incredibly common mistake I see people make is that they land back at exactly the same building they just died in, or right next to where they just died. Don't do this. If it's a 1v3 and you and your teammate are respawning, leave your last teammate to die or get out on their own. Because if you land right back down there, that trio that initially wiped you is gonna cook your teammate, see you on the minimap, and sprint headfirst at you. So land at a different POI or somewhere far enough away that either gives you enough time to loot up or just discourages them from chasing you down. All right, for the 15th and final mistake, which is one I'm sure all of us had made at some point in any type of ranked game mode, is rage queuing. And this is one that I myself had to practice today. I hopped on Call of Duty on this beautiful weekend morning to collect some sweet SR. But I'm not sure what it was, whether I didn't get enough sleep or just every iridescent player in the game was in my lobbies, but I was getting absolutely cooked. I initially started the day with a lot of passion and the desire to keep climbing up through the ranks, but in 3 games, I was down close to 200 SR. And at that point, I was extremely tilted. It pissed me off that I was getting farmed and making the opposite of progress. But instead of taking that rage and turning it into another negative 500 SR, I called it for the day with the intent to pick things back up tomorrow. That way, I won't have to waste a bunch of time trying to get back to where I've already been. All right, with that, those are 15 of the most common and detrimental mistakes I've seen both myself and my teammates make on my road to Diamond. Hopefully this video has helped some of you think, you know, I do make that mistake a lot, and are able to either fix it or make it less often going forward. Now, if any of these tips were helpful, a like on the video and a subscription would be much appreciated, with the promise that I'll have many more videos in the future to help you improve at Call of Duty and Warzone. So with that, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.